served in Namibia from 1996 to 1998. I taught people how to teach young children in schools. I was a primary teacher.
My name is Zach Arcaro. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Namibia from 2002 to 2004, and I was a high school math teacher at Ikulo Senior Secondary School. And the story that I want to tell is a trip we took to Brandberg Mountain. Brandberg Mountain is the highest point in Namibia, and when we were approached, we had been in country for about a year, and my wife and I were looking for how to spend our first vacation, and we were looking for something cheap that, because Namibia is a very touristy country in a lot of places, but we wanted to go somewhere off the beaten path. So we chose this mountain just because we saw a picture in a magazine. So we didn't know how to get there, but all we knew was the nearest town. So it was my wife and I and two other guys, and so when we left, we got up in the morning and we walked out. We were a kilometer away from the nearest highway, so we walked out there. We waited there for a while, and we got on a bus to. It was a bus full of medical patients that were on their way down to the capital, and the bus picked us up, and it didn't go very fast, but it got us to the next town, and then at the next place, so he just let us off at a gas station, and luckily we came across this preacher, and he was heading to the next town, so he agreed to take us there for a price, and it was reasonable. So he preached to us a little bit, but he got us to the next town, and then at any one of these stops we could be stuck there. Nobody could take us to the next place, and so he ended up. We got in the next car. They stopped and took us there, and so it could have been anybody, but we got in the truck with a tourism guide from that town we were going to. So he knew who to contact in that town who could take us to the mountain, and so and then we finally got to the last stop, the small town nearest to the mountain, and we sort of negotiated. Somebody got in contact with us. They found somebody who was willing to take us out there. And also pick us up, because this is a mountain out in the middle of nowhere. So we paid him to come to drop us off, and he was going to get some more money to come and pick us up 5 days later. So we finally made it there. So it was about a 400-mile trip. It took us 10 hours, and from our site in one part of the country to the base of this mountain in one day. With 4 different trips, we were pretty lucky and very happy to be there. It was a beautiful sunset with the big red mountain. And the rest of the trip, the hiking is another story. So you'll have to get that later. All right.
My name is Marie Pearson Shockley. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Namibia, and from 2002 to 2004. I went to the Peace Corps after retiring from the federal government. I wanted to go when President Kennedy's call went out. I was in college, but my mother said, nope, you're going to work. So I went to work. I did all the stuff that everybody else does, family. I have 2 adult children who thought I was mad to do this at 62, I believe I was. And I loved it. I was called Cuckoo Marie. Cuckoo not because I'm a nutcase, but because that's what elderly person. I went with this gray hair. And so I got in a little trouble for 2 things. Back then, they didn't want us to talk about AIDS. And I was watching the graveyard grow as I sat there. And so I said, how can I get around this? So they thought because I was an old lady that I wouldn't be bothered and I wouldn't upset that. So they told me to do my age training, but to say, to be abstinent. Well, this is a country where you can have a couple of wives, so duh. So I just said, how can I get around this? So when I had training, I would have big bowls of condoms in the back of the church. And they had me in the church. And they thought, Catholic, old lady, we're in. They made a mistake with that one. So I had a big bowl in the back. You know how you use those big salad bowls? I had that in the back with male condoms in one and female condoms in the other. And I'd always say, remember your ABCs. I always be, I say be, abstinent, of course. Have the test and be careful after you have the test, and remember your C's, not point to the condom bowls like that when I was this. So every so often the little nuns would come up and talk to me. They couldn't speak English anymore, and I could speak Oshadanga well. And so they'd come up and talk to me, and we'd have tea. And I think they'd go back and say, we talked to her, we told her. And I would sit there and listen. And I'd say, yes, sister, because I'm a good Catholic, and yes, sister, and no, sister. And I don't know what the heck she was saying, and she didn't know and then half the time when she'd leave, I had this little bag I carried that said AIDS, Namibia. I had condoms in it, and so when I would get tired of her, I would kind of, usher her to the door. And as soon as she got out of the way, I'd go out and start giving my condoms, because they'd come by me. People would come by me, and they knew it. They'd have their hand out. And whatever I grabbed, I gave it to them. So they brought me in twice to talk to me about it, and I understood exactly what they said, but I went into I think yes, I understand. But when they put me there initially, they said, old lady, Catholic, no problem. But I went back, and we had some effect because, I didn't count them, but I know where the graveyard was when I left, and I came back 4 years later, I guess it was. And it hadn't grown as much as it had when we were first there, because it was down near the church. And then all of a sudden, it was almost in our backyard. You go, and it was sad to see, because you knew why most of them were there because of AIDS.
My name's Amber Lung. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Namibia from 2005 to 2009. I was a community health volunteer, worked with a local faith-based organization that cared for people living with HIV and AIDS. One story that I'd like to share, it's hard to choose, but one of the secondary projects that I was involved with was a women's basket making group. So women wove baskets and tried to generate income to help them pay for transport fees or get access to treatment. And there was one local lodge in Namibia that had started buying baskets, but it was taking a while for them to come up with the payment. And so the women were weaving, and were selling baskets, and it was taking a while for this big check to come. Well, it finally did. Relatively speaking, I wish the check would have been more. I thought the women deserved more for their baskets, but it was more than they were used to getting. It was a huge payday for them. And I remember so clearly there was this area called an Oshana. It fills up with water during the rainy season. And women usually walk very carefully through this flooded plain, lift up their dresses. But at the end of our meeting, they were just overjoyed with their payday. And they were just skipping and frolicking through the water. And the kids had just been released from school. We're standing around just in disbelief staring at these women who were giddy. They didn't see their mothers or their aunts like that very often. They were just overjoyed. And that for me was one of the best days of my service.
My name's Simon Stump. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in 06 and 07 in Namibia. I lived in the village of Onyati, and I was a high school science teacher. I taught at Gosen Combined School, grades 9 and 10. So one story that really sticks out in my mind, during training I had read the book Teaching is Subversive Activity, and so I was really big on trying to encourage critical thinking and trying to encourage that kind of thing, encourage questioning and whatnot. And it's not something I always felt like I could do within the really strict syllabus of sort of what we needed to do for the kids to pass their grade 10 exams. And so as an extra credit thing I did, I started asking the kids just basic other questions. And there was one year there was one week where my question of the week was, okay, salt and sugar, they look both exactly the same. If you mix them together, that's not, like, you're not making a new compound, you're not making, like, some kind of new crazy thing, but there should be some way to take them apart. That's the definition of not having a chemical change. And so what is it? And I didn't know the answer to it. And at one point, like, one of my kids said, well, when you showed us in class that when you dissolve sugar, or when you dissolve salt in water, if you boil it, the salt comes out. And so what you need to do is you do the same thing and the salt will come out, but the sugar will not come out. And I had sort of told him, no, I don't think that's how it works. And, we went back and forth about this a little bit. And then at one point I said, well, you know what? You say this should work, let's try this and let's see what happens. And I'd forgotten that if you take sugar water and you boil it, what eventually happens is it all turns into caramel. And, at the end of that, I thought, like, wow, I just, I've been outsmarted by a 9th grader. Like, this is wonderful. This is great. So I gave him his extra, I think I was giving everyone candy if they got the questions right. So I gave him his candy and, told him good job.
My name is Alex Pompey. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Namibia from 2006 to 2008. I was a math education volunteer and an IT volunteer my second year. So my Rukwangali is a bit rusty because it's not easy to practice here, but I'd say, like, some of the main phrases we'd say is Ametane Wiza. It means I am coming, and it basically means your response for if anyone asks you to do anything, you say, I am coming, Ametane Wiza. And that could mean, I'll help you now, or I'll help you, in a day or something like that. It's just kind of a catch-all phrase, and you'd say moro moro or moro kene for greeting. What else? Let's see. Duka is run, so I would always tell the kids to duka 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 to run into the class. If they were dawdling, like, coming into class, I'd say, Ove duka, ove wiza, you must run, you must come quick, we have math to learn, type things. So.
My name is Lee Berger. I was in Namibia from 2008 to 2010. And while I was there, I taught science from grades 7 to 10.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Lee. I served in the country of Namibia in 2010. I was in the village of Kamenyab, which is in northwest Namibia, a rural town, as a health volunteer. I liked working in a rural community, especially with the fact that just getting to know people and their ways of life there were just very contrary and different to how the life is here in the United States. And I found that experience very valuable.